So thanks for inviting me and having me here. It's a great honor to be here. I'm probably bound to repeat a couple of the things that have been said because I have not been able to understand what has been going on in Swedish, and I apologize for that. But in any case, I would like to scan the ethical horizon and see what kind of problems we have seen and we also have identified in our EGE report, to which Niels-Erik has probably referred. And I would also like to try to defend or suggest new ways of doing ethics. And there's also a little bit of overlap with the part of Virginia's talk that I heard, and that is foregrounding the notion of design in ethics. Ethics, if it's going to be adequate for the 21st century, needs to focus on design. And I will try to make clear what I mean by that. Now, so what's happening? So everyone is on the same page. We have here the CEO of Google. AI, probably the most important thing humanity has ever worked on. The European Commission, same idea. The way we approach AI will define the world we live in. And you know that something important is happening if this person starts to talk about it, and we're talking about summoning the demon with AI. So what is at stake? This guy probably got it right when he said, "Whoever becomes the leader in this sphere will become the ruler of the world." The Chinese got that as well. They are using it everywhere. It's face recognition, citizen scores, and it's not embedded into a democratic system where with the rule of law and human rights are protected. They're experimenting with citizen scores, and we know how that works. I recently saw an overview by the Hertie School of Government from Berlin, studying 40 different experiments that are going on right now in China, ranging from narrowly defined credit scores to indeed very broadly defined citizen scores. And of course, there is a new scramble for Africa. It's a digital scramble, and China is undertaking it. It's not only building roads and infrastructure in China, it's also collecting a lot of data and introducing their AI solutions as they are introduced in a police state, basically Singapore. Or there is the American model. The American model is move fast, break things first, apologize later, all under the leadership of President Trump. And no regulation, please, right? So there is a real digital battle for supremacy going on. And the question is, where is Europe going? What is the answer of Europe? How can we innovate responsibly and use this technology to support our view of man and our model of the economy and our model of society? Because outside of Europe, the European Charter of Human Rights, Convention of Human Rights and Fundamental Rights is not very much in demand. So can we make that work? Can we support the European project? Is Europe going to be the museum of the world? Or is it perhaps the cradle of a new enlightenment, Enlightenment 2.0? So that is right on the table. So I think the Commission and the people that we talk to in Brussels should have this sense of urgency. It's happening now. Hundreds of billions are invested all over the world, and it's used to support a particular view of man, a particular view of society, and to justify it and underpin it. And it's not based everywhere. We cannot assume that it will be based on our fundamental ethical principles. Macron has made a courageous attempt. He was the first to introduce an AI initiative for humanity. And now he's going to talk about renaissance, etc. People ridicule him a little bit. I think it's an interesting way of approaching the problem. And as Niels-Erik said, Europe is doing what it can. We have produced this statement on artificial intelligence, robotics, and autonomous systems. The European Commission is really working very hard on it, and now there is Virginia as part also of a high-level expert group. I'm also witnessing what is going on there, and they're supposed to come with an ethical framework before the summer. Well, thinking about a good digital society was undertaken by these, it's a little bit early for the pub quiz, but these are European philosophers. You will recognize Karl Marx and Immanuel Kant and John Stuart Mill and Rousseau and Machiavelli in the middle. And these people thought about what a good society, they had different answers, but they all were thinking about what is a good society, which kinds of social, political arrangements will citizens be able to do well and thrive. But they had no commercial interest, a little bit of vanity probably, but not like these people. Self-appointed philosophers, they are now determining how our society looks, what it looks like, through their websites, their tweets, their blogs, and of course through their products. They are shaping our societies. And we have to take this very literally. The former CEO of Google said, "We know who you are, where you have been, and more or less what you think." That is literally true. We need to be mindful as we develop thought-reading technology, and we're using machine learning to do that. Artificial intelligence can visualize static thoughts. So the things on the left of these squares are the things that people were looking at. And to the right-hand side, you see attempts to reconstruct what these people have been thinking about by applying machine deep learning on their brain waves. So we're getting good at this, so literally. But also, of course, through this route, with 300, give me 300 of your likes, and I will be able to better predict how you will score on an extended psychological test than your own partner. And with 10 likes, I'm already better than your colleagues. And these people tell us it is really about connecting people. Well, not really. It is about your identity graph, a very extensive model of what you would like to look at and how we can make you stay longer on a page and make more buys. So digital twins are building up. These are taken from the engineering domain, where a model, a very detailed model. We already have those ships in CAD/CAM systems, and now they're supplied with sensors, so they feed back real-time big data to the computer model, which is updated with every set of data that it receives. And the same is done for human beings. So very worthwhile reading is Susanna Zubov's Surveillance Capitalism, and she explains in detail how the business model works. It's all about the data, of course, to train up the machine learning and the AI to better predict what you're interested in and how we can make you buy stuff. The top lawyer of the European Commission, I think, had a very insightful piece recently on what is happening, and he discusses the concentration of power with big tech, and also has observed that they are very interested in ethics. They're so interested in ethics. They are getting ethical think tanks together and supporting our colleagues, and they want to hire us. The telephone is going every day in our departments, and we get very interesting propositions to travel around the world and stay in fancy hotels if we help them to think about ethics. Well, he remarked, and I think it's true, they're so interested in ethics these days as long as it is not law, right? Because then it's going to hurt. It's going to cost money. So this combination of 5 factors is really something that should scare us a little bit. The accumulation of incredible amounts of capital, the ownership of ubiquitous and central infrastructures and social platforms, the domination of democracy and public discourse, the control over persons and their data, and monopolies in AI, science, technology, and innovation. It's very difficult to get good people at universities because many of them are going to industry. Now, what is this AI? It started all with, I'll be very brief about this, as a rule-based kind of approach. Let's try to tease out the expertise of intelligent people, of experts, and we'll just put that in a lot of rules, and then the inference machine will just crank out the conclusions, right? And now we have a completely different architecture, and previous speakers have already mentioned that and given many examples. So this is what it looks like, but it's just statistics on steroids. And is that really understanding and thinking? Is that what human beings do? Well, I tend to agree with with John Searle, who said, "My car and my adding machine and my machine learning device understand nothing. They are not in that line of business. They do something completely different." Which doesn't mean that they cannot achieve remarkable results. And that is the takeaway message, as this Turing Award winner, Esker Dijkstra, a computer scientist from the Netherlands, said, "The question of whether computers can think is like the question of whether submarines can swim." Right? It's not about whether they can swim. They can do remarkable things. They will change our world. They will change the lives of people. And that, from an ethical point of view, is what matters. That's what we have to think about. And everything that comes under these headings, they are great at. Classifying, categorizing, screening, selecting, labeling, and making the distinction between a muffin and your dog. Muffin, dog, dog, muffin, dog. Right, so they're very good at that. And they're also very good in determining which are very strong positions on the Go board, and you can produce world champions Go with it. You can apply it for many, many good purposes. Don't misunderstand me. So we can achieve a lot, and that people already also mentioned. And the FDA has approved the first applications in medicine on the basis of AI machine learning. What are the key moral problems? The key moral problems have to do, there are many, many more, and time is too short to cover everything. Many of those problems have to do with the conditions for autonomy and responsibility. This technology is chipping away at the conditions that are necessary to hold people responsible and prevents people from taking full responsibility. That works in the following way. They compromise, undermine, or have the potential to do so, knowledge and transparency, control, and freedom of choice. And you will recognize those three are conditions for taking responsibility. If they are not present, you say, "Oh, I didn't know what happened. Sorry, I didn't understand what was happening, so I'm not responsible." They correspond with types of excuses. "Sorry, the glass slipped from my finger. I didn't have any control over my hand, right? So I'm not responsible." Or freedom and choice. I was coerced. I didn't have any free choices to make. So, right. So that is something that we need to think about, and I will just briefly touch upon them. Knowledge and transparency. We have made things very, very complex. The world was already very, very complex in the days of good old-fashioned computers and software, and now it is extremely complex because machine learning and artificial intelligence and statistics are introduced in all kinds of places in those complex hyper-connected networks. And it is a little bit true what these people suggest and discuss in great detail, the black box society and weapons of math destruction. Just a very brief example to show what has happened. I've already seen technical examples, but here is you train up a neural net and to learn it to make a distinction between huskies and wolves. Apparently difficult for people to do. So you give 100 pictures of wolves and 100 pictures of huskies, and you tell the system which is which. So you train it up, you learn. But it turned out that the system just has been looking at whether there was snow in the background, right? Because all the pictures of the wolves were taken in the snow, and the pictures of the huskies were taken against the green background. So if you put a husky in the snow, it will think that it's a wolf. So it hasn't learned anything about the difference between huskies and wolves. And if you apply that in a human context, that is going to produce a couple of real big problems from a moral point of view. So the quest, the holy grail, is about explainable AI that we can understand, and if we base our decisions affecting people on those systems and their results, then we will be able to explain and to justify what we have done to the people who are affected. Now, there's various attempts are made to make that powerful epistemic technology explainable and transparent so that we can responsibly use it. Now, the jury is still out of how far we can come with that, but ideally we would like to use the power for good of those AI systems, but then in a responsible way. So hold on to it, and that's exactly what we mean by responsible innovation. Use it for good. You can solve a lot of societal problems on that list of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and we have many of those problems. So let's use it, But bear in mind that there are some huge problems that may undermine and compromise the conditions for moral responsibility of human beings in that digital time, as we are now looking at. So this is very interesting. Computer scientist from Berkeley, The Book of Why. Read that. It's a great attempt to try and to marry the power of machine learning, deep learning, those kind of statistical AI techniques with the good old-fashioned, let's say, logic, and to marry and to look at hybrid architectures. I think that is a very promising way of doing it. And for example, Virginia and Frank have a background in this traditional rule-based AI, and I think we will see a lot of the interaction between them. Another approach is to produce and try to make these systems talk and trying to visualize where they have been looking at. So, for example, in image recognition, you'll see, okay, it's a train. So which parts of the photograph has the system been looking at? Which were the most relevant and significant or salient features that it has been looking at? So these things are experimented with to do what? Well, to have the power of the technology and to make it talk and to make it transparent so that we can use it responsibly. Control issues. Well, we know these things. Court cases are going on who is responsible. They've tried Google, and now they're trying the driver. Of course, here they're also in the kind of the recommender software that we know from Amazon is operative here as well. So you like this book, so you may also like that book. If you have a system like that, and you don't want it to reason like, you like this target, you may also like that target. Let's do something with it. I think that is something that we specially recommended for you. We don't want that. So the question again is, can we use systems with a certain level of autonomy that could be beneficial, that we could use for legitimate and justified purposes, but retain meaningful human control over those systems? Can we do that? And so people are looking at design of the technology itself and the way it is embedded in a systems environment to provide us with enough of control to claim that we are still responsible and that it makes sense for us to take that responsibility. Because control is a necessary condition for taking responsibility and holding people responsible. Freedom and choice. So these recommender systems learn a lot from our behavior. They build up these identity graphs, these pictures, these models, these digital doubles, and they approach us and they throw advertisements at us and they throw all kinds of suggestions at us and new videos to look at because they want only one thing, to make us stay as long as is possible on their site, to buy as much stuff. And it's learning from our behavior. And it has led, as is well documented, to echo chambers and filter bubbles, and you may end up in your own filter bubble because of the software that is working on those sites. You will end up reading the daily me, something that is specially configured for you. You're not offered that kind of wide kind of resource of information, but you're just reading the daily me. And it is, if you're familiar probably with the nudging literature, so that is implementing policy, public policy, and designing the world in such a way that the implementation of the policy is going to be more successful. A little hint, right? Fasten your seatbelts. We will have this terrible beep going off, and if you don't fasten your seatbelts, so it's a little reminder, a nudge to wear your safety belts, and this is also a nudge, right? We want people to go for the healthy option, so take the stairs instead of the escalator. And indeed, if you go and stand over there and you click the number of people who take the stairs, the challenge, yeah, it works. The likelihood that people will behave in accordance with what you want them to do goes up. And so the traffic bumps in the road slow people down effectively, right? The fly in a men's urinal makes people behave appropriately around it. So this is a powerful one, and I think it's good to try to understand what's happening here. This is a choice architecture. This is called a choice architecture. It is lining up choices for you. You can do A and you can do B. And there's a choice architect, someone who has actually thought about how to present choices to you, right? Now look at this one. You can subscribe to The Economist for $59, or you can subscribe to the printed version for $125, or you can subscribe to the print and the web for $125. Now, everyone says, let's take the third option. I have both for $125. That's a good deal. Now, I have an alternative choice architecture underneath here, under the red square. There are two options. You can subscribe to The Economist for $59 online, $59, or for the print and the web for $125. And now everyone says, forget about the paperwork. For $59, I will just do with the online version. Right? You see that the way you present something to people will make them pick one particular option. And of course, it is the preferred option that you take the third one. And this is a science. I have colleagues and people are working on this to line up choices for you so that you will do what they want you to do. And every time you are confused and you think, oh, let's put this in an Excel sheet, right? Because I have trouble understanding that. You can bet that they have thought actually to produce that confusion in you. We're subjected to A/B testing. Every time when I provide you with a URL, everyone gets to see a different site, right? With little experiments on you. Will this make you buy more? Will a blue background make you stay longer? Right. And the nudging Pope, the guy who introduced this idea, said it is possible that companies that provide clear, simple products would do poorly in the marketplace because they are not taking advantage of people's propensity to blunder. So this is where we are. And of course, it is used in a political realm as well. We know that the Facebook data were used by Cambridge Analytica, who played a role that is still under investigation in the Brexit. I couldn't find a nicer picture of this guy, but he was the architect behind it. And we know what happened. But the thing to notice here, it is that combination of psychology, advanced behavioral science, plus big data that we're all voluntarily providing, plus AI, that makes sense of the data, looks for patterns, and allows you to predict the behavior of people. That is the tricky thing here. You polarize people in two camps. The people who are in the middle just making up their minds, you kind of send them the messages on the basis of which you have good reasons to assume that they will change their behavior in the way that you want them to change their behavior. That's called micro-targeting. And so the question becomes, in this world where big data and artificial intelligence and advanced behavioral science are combined, are we controlled or are we still in control? What does Europe have to say? Well, we published this report where I identified many of those problems. We discussed them in a nutshell, and now the new high-level group is trying to come up with a list of principles, a normative framework for Europe. These are the issues that are discussed: safety, security, risk. I still have 5 minutes, I think, Niels here.
No.
Or, yeah, yeah, 5.
You had 25 plus 5 discussion.
Okay. Oh, okay. Okay, good.
Don't let me frighten you, but do you want me to go back down?
You scared the hell out of me. Yeah.
I go down.
So the question is how to do ethics, how to think about these things. And my answer is by design. If we are not at the place where the technology is made, where the software is made, where the algorithms are made, then it's too late. It's too little too late. We have to be there. Humanities and philosophers and ethicists need to be there. And I come back to Nemitz's point, and he said in a recent publication very much agree with that, and he has picked up on this idea that is broader and has been going on for quite some time. In order to protect and strengthen Western liberal democracies, as I assume that we all want, in the age of AI, in the core Trinitarian idea of human rights, rule of law, and democracy, we need a new culture of technology and business development, which we call human rights, rule of law, and democracy by design. If we cannot implement it in this high-tech stuff, it is not going to work. We can open up a new bottle of red wine and have a very good philosophical discussion. It's not going to be effective. It's not going to change the world. It's not going to help people in their lives. And this is an article that's been written in the 80s of the previous century, and it's entitled, "Do Artifacts Have Politics?" Yes, they do have politics. What you see here is a low-hanging overpass that has been made by a racist architect, because he made it intentionally low so as to prevent buses from the poor black neighborhoods to be routed to the middle-class white beaches for the middle class, the white middle class. So the buses couldn't go from the Bronx to the beach, so you would see less black people over there, right? So that idea, that racist idea, was expressed in a piece of technology, a very crude piece of technology in this case, but it's happening every time when people design technology. Your computer, your software, your menu, your choice architecture is informed by those values. So we can design for addiction, right? We can design for all of these things. This is a hostile architecture. If you don't want people to sleep there because you don't like the idea, you just do this, right? And the world is, if you look around, the world is full of those examples. We collect them in Delft and we study them. But this is what is happening. And we should have the wherewithal and the competence to question designs, because there the lives of people will be shaped. So it's true what Churchill said. We shape our buildings, and thereafter our buildings start to shape us. We build a house, we live in the house, and we become like the house. We inherit its properties. So we have to think first before we build it and start to live in it. So in IT, every level, when you use a system, a computer system, whether it's AI or not, it is full of those choices, and some of them are trivial, and some of them are extremely important. And what you are confronted with when you use the system, you are confronted by a consolidated set of choices. It's been congealing in the system, and you have to be able to pinpoint where you have a problem, where you would like to see things developed in a different way. So this is what we call value-sensitive design. Left-hand side is the world of ethics and principles. This is what ought to be the case. And this is a list of those values. And on the right-hand side, you have the world of technology. And you want not the racist ideas to go into the low-hanging overpass. You want our shared values to be expressed properly in the things that we make, whether they are algorithms or machine learning systems or whatever. And you want to be able to explain to the citizens and the taxpayers that you have done a good job from this point of view. So that's what we call designing for X. And X ranges over whatever moral value you have, but the important thing is that you have to be able to design for it. So you have to bridge down from this very high level of abstraction that philosophers and people from the humanities are so comfortable and so familiar with, but you have to bring it down to where the technology is sitting and where the rubber hits the road. And if we do not do that, others will do it for us, and probably not in the way that we like this to be handled. So many of those values, conflicts and dilemmas. So we're constantly morally overloaded. We want sustainability and privacy and accountability and democracy and all of that stuff. So it weighs very heavy on our shoulders. But the good news is we can handle that moral overload by being creative and being innovative. Actually, my point is that innovation is, to a large extent, the attempt to reconcile and go for all the values that we have. So we have to make an extra effort to hold on to privacy, not to dump it and say, well, let's use the big data. No, hold on to it and try to design for that. so this is the principle I would like to. I'm running out of time, so I would like to finish. I already have. Huh?
Yeah. My simple nudging has had no effect.
no effect whatsoever. So if you can change the world by innovation today, this is the final one, so that you can satisfy more of your obligations tomorrow, you have a moral obligation to innovate today, right? So you need to be transparent because you want to be able to explain what the AI does. You also want to use its power because you can do so many good things with it. So you really have to think hard about how you can combine those things. You want to use the data, but you also want to respect the privacy of people. So you really have to make an effort to think about something really creative. And of course, this privacy by design and the examples I gave of attempts to make it more transparent have been really, I think, a very promising route to take. So that's what I wanted to share with you as a starter. Much. Yeah.
Wonderful as always. And so I think I learned early on that as a chairman, you should never stand in the way for a coffee. So I think that people will ask you questions during coffee, and
sure. Good.
So
by
again, this is yours. Okay. Thank you, and thank you for coming. Okay. Please.